imagine you have the power to move a mountain. But, the catch is, well, the second you actually want to move it for your own benefit, you lose the power.
Right. It's a total paradox.
Exactly. And for thousands of years, I mean, we've thought of miracles as like magic tricks or just these arbitrary divine favors handed down to, a few lucky people. But the ancient texts we're diving into today, they suggest something entirely different.
Yeah, they really do.
They suggest that miracles are actually this rigorous mechanical science, and the primary fuel for this science, utter devastating grief.
Which is, it completely upends our conventional understanding of physics and causality, right?
Wow, totally.
I mean, we are so conditioned to look for external forces, right? Like gravity or electricity or kinetic energy. But when you dive into the esoteric frameworks of, say, the testaments of the 12 patriarchs and the deeper layers of the gospel narrative.
And the Kabbalistic texts, too, right? Like the Zohar.
Exactly, the Zohar. When you look at those, you find a reality that is fundamentally inside out. The physical universe is presented not as this solid, immutable structure, but as a highly responsive mirror.
A mirror, which means the reflection only changes if the object in front of the mirror changes first.
That's it, exactly.
So today we are tracking this profound transformation of the human soul. For you listening, we're taking you on a really deep dive. We are examining the actual mechanics of moving from a state of total spiritual blindness, escaping what the ancients called the animalistic herd, and returning to the operational state of a divine man.
Yeah, we really have to approach this, not just as some historical curiosity, but as an active investigation into human capacity.
Yeah, it's not just a history lesson.
No, not at all. These texts are essentially blueprints. They demand that we strip away centuries of accumulated assumptions about divine intervention.
Yeah.
Because they argue that the power to bend reality, it isn't randomly bestowed. It is structurally achieved through a very, very precise sequence of psychological and spiritual alignments.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the ignition sequence then. If we're stuck in the spiritual blindness, how do the lights actually come on?
Right, so our sources point us to a highly specific event in the Testament of Levi.
Yeah, Levi.
Levi experiences a moment where what the text describes as the spirit of understanding of the Lord comes upon him. But, the context of this visitation is what I find so incredibly striking.
Because he's not doing anything special, right? He's not like up on a mountain fasting.
Exactly. Levi is not engaged in some complex esoteric ritual. He is not meditating in a temple. The text specifies that he is simply going about his daily labor. He's pasturing his flocks in Abel Mall.
Just doing his job.
Just doing his job. The descent of divine insight happens in the mundane reality of the everyday. But, and this is key, the nature of this spirit of understanding isn't some warm, comforting feeling of cosmic unity.
Right, it's not a fuzzy feeling.
No, it is a sudden, unsparing cognitive shift. The veil of worldly illusion is violently pulled back.
It's like he suddenly puts on a pair of glasses that lets him see the structural decay of the world. He looks around and suddenly sees everything with this terrifying clarity.
Terrifying is the right word.
Because the text notes that he observed humanity, quote, corrupting their way. But it goes way further than just seeing people doing bad things. Levi actually says he saw that unrighteousness had built walls for itself and that lawlessness sat upon towers.
Yes, the architectural imagery there is very deliberate.
Right. If Levi is seeing structural sin towers and walls, that implies the corruption isn't just behavioral, it's institutionalized.
That is a crucial distinction. Think about what it takes to build a tower, right? It requires cooperation, it requires planning, resources, engineering.
It's a whole system.
Exactly. Levi isn't just seeing individual human failings. He is perceiving the highly organized, systemic nature of deceit. Walls are designed to isolate and divide. Towers are designed to dominate and survey. So to be filled with this spirit of understanding is to behold societal decay exactly as the divine sees it. Not as a collection of random errors, but as a deliberate, engineered rebellion against truth.
But this is where the text really challenges our baseline human reactions. Because if I am suddenly gifted with perfect moral clarity, and I can clearly see how deeply corrupt and oppressive the system is, my first instinct is righteous fury.
Sure, of course, that's the natural human response.
I want to burn the towers down. Fury seems like the appropriate, highly moral response to systemic oppression. So why is the mandated divine response in this text something completely different? Like, Levi doesn't get angry, he grieves.
The righteous fury is actually a trap, and the ancient mind understood this perfectly.
Wait, really? A trap?
Absolutely, think about it. When you are furious at the corruption of others, What are you doing psychologically? You are elevating yourself above them.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You are establishing a separation. Fury requires you to act as the judge, which immediately inflates the ego and alienates you from the very people who are trapped in the system.
So you basically become just another tower.
Precisely.
Hmm.
You adopt the architectural posture of the oppressor. Grief, on the other hand, is the ultimate connective tissue.
Because it requires empathy.
Yes, grief implies profound empathy. When Levi grieves for the race of the sons of men, he is recognizing that the people building these walls of unrighteousness are fundamentally broken. He doesn't see them as enemies to be destroyed. He sees them as victims of their own engineered blindness.
That is heavy.
It is.
Mm.
But this is the hallmark of the true spirit of understanding. It separates you from the iniquity, absolutely, but it binds you to humanity through intercession. Levi's heart breaks, and he immediately prays for their salvation.
So this internal state of grief triggers the external visionary experience. He falls asleep, and the text describes the heavens opening and an angel inviting him in. But the angel makes it very clear that this insight wasn't given to Levi for his own personal enlightenment.
No, not at all. Divine intellect in this tradition is inherently pedagogical. It comes with a mandate.
He has to teach it.
Exactly. The angel tells Levi that he was given this counsel and understanding specifically so he could instruct his descendants. He is ordered to light up the light of knowledge in Jacob and act as a son to all the seed of Israel.
I want to look closely at that metaphor for a second, acting as a sun, because the sun doesn't just hold light, right? Its fundamental nature is to radiate, to make things visible for others so they can navigate.
Right, it's an active process.
If you hoard the understanding, if you just sit on the mountain enjoying your perfect moral clarity, you are fundamentally violating the nature of the gift.
Because the goal is to empower the collective, not isolate the individual, which actually connects directly to a really brilliant psychological insight from another patriarch, Judah.
Oh, yeah, Judah's fulcrum concept.
Exactly. Judah attempts to explain the actual mechanics of how the human mind operates within this landscape of truth and deceit. He posits that humanity has been given a spirit of the understanding of the mind.
And he says the spirit sits exactly in the middle, right? Between the spirits of truth and the spirits of deceit.
Yes. Judah is describing the architecture of free will. The human mind is framed as a fulcrum. It is entirely neutral.
So it could go either way.
Right. When the spirit of understanding, the light Levi received, illuminates that inner faculty, it doesn't force your hand. It simply empowers your free will by revealing the true nature of the options before you.
It just shows you what's actually there.
Precisely. It allows you to see the net of deceit clearly, so you can actively reject it and align your volition entirely with the works of truth.
But the fulcrum can tilt the other way. The light shows you reality, but you still have to choose to walk in it. So what are the mechanics of dissent? What happens when a person repeatedly chooses to ignore the light?
Well, the patriarch texts are quite explicit about the consequences of that choice.
Yeah, they don't hold back. Levi teaches his sons that those who bless the Lord will be blessed, and those who curse him will perish. But their definition of cursing the Lord completely bypasses, like, verbal blasphemy.
Right. It is absolutely not a magical verbal formula. You don't curse the Lord by uttering a forbidden word or shaking your fist at the sky in a moment of anger.
Which is how we usually think of it.
Exactly. But the sources define cursing the Lord as a deliberate, structural abandonment of the commandments through your lifestyle. It is enacted through hypocrisy, through hatred, and through pride.
Let's look at the specifics, actually, starting with Asher. Asher warns against what he calls the double-faced man.
The double-faced man is the embodiment of cognitive dissonance. This is the individual who, for example, defrauds their neighbor or engages in ruthless business practices, effectively swearing falsely against the divine order.
Right.
Yet simultaneously, they attempt to project an aura of righteousness by perhaps tossing a coin to a beggar or observing a public ritual.
So the hypocrisy itself is the curse.
Exactly. Asher is arguing that the hypocrisy itself is the curse. It is an attempt to manipulate the divine scale, which demonstrates a fundamental contempt for the omniscience of the Most High.
And then Gad takes it even further by analyzing hatred. He states that hatred works lawlessness even against the Lord himself, because the foundational command is to love your neighbor.
Right.
So when you harbor hatred, you are actively refusing the divine frequency. Gad says this literally blinds the soul.
And then Judah warns about pride and the love of money. He outlined how covetousness causes a literal madness in the human mind, withdrawing a person from the law of God and blinding their higher faculties.
So across all these examples, what you are seeing is a willful corruption of holy ordinances. They treat the divine law with arrogant contempt, and they substitute their own, localized desires for the universal order.
Yes. And the texts are terrifyingly clear about the ontological result of this behavior.
Meaning what happens to their actual being.
Right. You don't just get a negative mark on some cosmic ledger. There is a literal degradation of your nature. You lose the divine title of man.
That is so wild to me.
You lose the spiritual ontology of being made in the divine image. The text referred to this fallen state as becoming mere flesh, or joining what they call the herd.
So what does this all mean? Let's talk about the mechanics of this descent into the herd. I like to think of the human cognitive apparatus not like a battery that just runs out of juice, but like an incredibly advanced multi-frequency receiver, like a smartphone almost.
Smartphone. Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so when you engage in the hypocrisy, the hatred, and the covetousness that the patriarchs describe, you aren't just breaking a moral rule, you are physically damaging the antenna of the smartphone.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Right. You lose the ability to pick up the higher frequencies. The spirit of understanding just becomes static. And when the higher receiver is broken, the human organism defaults to its secondary, localized biological inputs.
It reverts to pure instinct.
Exactly. Survival, territory, appetite, dominance. The phone disconnects from the operating system and just becomes a useless brick of raw materials. You haven't become an evil version of a human. You have simply ceased to operate as a human. You are now functioning identically to an animal in a herd, responding only to external stimuli and biological drives.
Which is precisely why Reuben uses the imagery of the beast. He warns that the spirit of lust is filled with ignorance, and it leads a youth as a blind man to a pit and as a beast to a precipice.
Notice the emphasis on blindness again?
Yes, the blindness and the instinct. The intellect has been entirely bypassed. And Naphtali's warning is even more chilling.
What does Naphtali say?
He says that the one who abandons goodness becomes the devil's instrument, quote, and every wild beast shall master him.
Whoa! Every wild beast shall master him.
Right. If you forfeit your divine dominion, the mandate to rule over the animal nature, you don't magically become a free, independent agent. Nature abhors a vacuum.
So you become subjugated by the very animalistic forces you were designed to govern.
Exactly. The profound tragedy outlined here is the willing choice of the instinctual herd over the infinite potential of the heavens. It is choosing to let the advanced receiver degrade until it can only pick up static.
Man. Which brings us to the most urgent question of this entire investigation. If a human soul has descended into the herd, if the receiver is heavily damaged, governed by base instincts, completely blind to the light, how does it find its way back? How do you repair the antenna?
For that, we